The wind howled outside the small settlement on Vera 9, a planet so cold it could freeze steel in minutes. The snow fell in endless white sheets, and the jagged mountains in the distance looked like frozen teeth biting the sky. Inside the human dormitory, a small group of engineers and diplomats huddled together under heavy blankets. Their alien neighbors, the Taylorians, moved gracefully outside, their bodies almost impervious to the biting cold. Eli sat on his bunk, shivering under his blanket. His teeth chattered and his hands were numb even under thick gloves. He had been awake for hours trying to adjust to the harsh climate. Humans were fragile in ways the Taylorians weren't. But Eli had always believed that humans had other strengths: cleverness, creativity, and the ability to adapt quickly. Tonight, though, he wondered if it would be enough. From the corner of the room, he heard a quiet rustle. Lara, the young human diplomat assigned to the settlement, emerged from her bunk, rubbing her arms for warmth. She looked at Eli with a small smile. "Cold again?" she asked, her voice soft but teasing. Eli nodded, too cold to respond properly. His blanket was twisted around him like a cocoon. Lara shook her head, walked over, and without warning pulled his blanket off. "Hey!" Eli exclaimed, reaching for it, but she held it just out of reach. "I need this one more than you do," she said, holding it to her chest. Then, with a dramatic flourish, she dropped her own blanket at his feet. "Fair trade." Eli stared at her, bewildered. She was smiling, eyes twinkling like she knew some secret he didn't. He hesitated for a moment, then crawled under her blanket. It smelled faintly of lavender, and for a moment he forgot the cold entirely. "You humans," Lara said softly, "always finding ways to make the worst situations a little better." Eli laughed quietly, or just trying not to die of frostbite. Outside, the wind rattled the metal walls of the dormitory, and the howling reminded them that survival here was not easy. Vera 9 was beautiful in a harsh way, the ice crystals reflecting the pale sun, the mountains rising like frozen kings, but it was a place where humans were the weaker species. Yet that weakness had not stopped them from colonizing it. Humans had a habit of finding solutions where none seemed possible. The settlement was small, a cluster of reinforced domes connected by narrow tunnels. Each dome served a purpose: living quarters, engineering labs, hydroponic farms, and the main control center. The Taylorians had their own structures nearby, elegant and smooth, built to withstand the cold naturally. Humans had to build everything themselves, using ingenuity and tools. Eli wrapped himself tighter in the blanket Lara had given him and looked around the room. Other humans were settling in for the night, some tinkering with small gadgets to generate heat, others simply trying to sleep. The dormitory smelled of hot tea, metal, and the faint scent of machine oil. "You know," Lara said, sitting on the edge of her bunk, "it's not just the cold that's a problem here." Eli raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "It's the Taylorians," she said quietly. "They think humans are weak because we get cold. They don't understand us. They don't see that we're fast thinkers. We survive in ways they can't even imagine." Eli considered this. He had noticed it too. The Taylorians were impressive, tall, elegant, and strong. Their bodies produced heat naturally, and they moved with a fluid grace that made humans look clumsy. But humans had advantages the Taylorians did not. Humans could invent, improvise, and use their environment in clever ways. Humans had tricks that were invisible to outsiders, and that made them dangerous in subtle ways. "You're saying we can outsmart them?" Eli asked, half joking. Lara nodded. "Exactly. We might be fragile, but our minds are powerful. We adapt, we trade ideas, we survive. That's our real strength." Eli smiled, feeling warmth, not just from the blanket, but from the thought itself. Humans were small and weak, but cleverness had carried them across planets, across galaxies. And if they could survive Vera 9, they could survive anything. The dormitory door hissed open, and a Taylorian named Riss stepped inside. His blue skin shimmered faintly under the dim lights, and his tall, thin frame looked unbothered by the cold. He glanced at the humans, then at Eli and Lara. "Another cold night?" he asked in a calm voice, almost amused. Eli nodded. "You could say that." Riss tilted his head, studying them. "I don't understand why you humans always complain about the cold. Your bodies are fragile, yet you survive. How?" Eli glanced at Lara, who winked at him. He realized she was right. Humans survived because they were clever. "We adapt," he said simply. "We find solutions." Riss considered this, then gave a soft hum. Interesting. Perhaps your species is more resourceful than I thought. After Riss left, the dormitory fell quiet again. The wind outside seemed louder now, echoing through the metal walls. Eli and Lara lay back under their shared blanket, watching the faint auroras ripple in the sky through the small window above. "Do you ever think," Eli said quietly, "that maybe this planet is trying to teach us something?" Lara laughed softly. "Maybe, or maybe it's just trying to see how clever we humans really are." Eli smiled, feeling a spark of hope. Humans had survived harsh worlds before, using nothing but their minds and their hearts. This cold, distant planet would be no different. He looked at Lara, who was smiling at him in that familiar, confident way, and he realized something. Humans could face any challenge not because they were the strongest, but because they were smart, resourceful, and willing to help each other, even in the smallest ways, like sharing a blanket in the middle of the night. Hours passed. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, the dormitory was warm with quiet determination. Eli and Lara drifted into a light sleep, minds buzzing with ideas for survival, for invention, for making life here better. Even in the harshest conditions, humans thrived not because of strength, but because of heart, courage, and the willingness to think differently. When Eli woke, the wind had quieted, but the cold remained. He looked at Lara, who was already awake, sketching a new idea for a portable heating device. He smiled. Humans always found a way, and tonight, he was reminded that the smallest acts, sharing warmth, trading blankets, thinking creatively, could make the biggest difference. "Fair trade," Lara said with a grin, tossing him the blanket again. Eli caught it and pulled it over his shoulders. "Fair trade," he agreed, feeling that somehow, in this frozen alien world, humanity had already won a small victory. Outside the window, the auroras continued their slow dance, but inside, two humans lay under one blanket, hearts and minds alight with determination. The planet was cold, the challenge immense. But humans had a habit of surviving the impossible, and this was only the beginning. The morning light barely pierced the thick clouds that hung over Vera 9. The settlement was quiet, except for the occasional hum of the heating units and the distant clatter of Taylorian patrols. Humans, though small and fragile in this frozen land, were already stirring. Their minds were always active, always seeking solutions, and the cold had never dampened their creativity. Eli rolled out of his bunk, the blanket still wrapped around his shoulders. He could feel the cold seeping through, but it did not bother him as much as it had last night. Humans had a way of using discomfort as fuel. Lara was already awake, kneeling over a sketchpad and pencil, her brow furrowed as she worked. "What are you drawing?" Eli asked, rubbing his hands together for warmth. "Something to keep us warmer," Lara said without looking up. "A personal heater. Something we can carry on our backs, powered by the small energy cells we've been testing." Eli nodded, impressed. Humans never waited for perfect solutions, they made do with what they had. "You really think it will work?" "Of course," Lara said, finally looking at him. "If we can rig a small reflective shield and combine it with these cells, it will create a bubble of warmth around each of us. It won't replace the blankets entirely, but it will give us more mobility and keep us safe during long walks outside." Outside the dormitory, the Taylorians moved gracefully through the snow. Their blue skin glowed faintly, impervious to frostbite, and their eyes scanned the humans with curiosity. They had been watching the humans for weeks, trying to understand how such fragile beings could survive here. So far, the humans had outwitted small dangers that the aliens had ignored, and the Taylorians were growing cautious. Eli and Lara gathered a small group of engineers, and together, they began assembling the first prototypes of their personal heaters. The devices were simple: metal frames, reflective panels, small energy cells, and insulation. But to the humans, simplicity was not weakness. It was cleverness. As they worked, Riss, the Taylorian observer, entered the workshop. His long limbs moved silently over the floor. "You continue to improvise," he said. "Your species is remarkable. Why not accept the limitations of your bodies and adapt like we do?" Eli paused and looked up. "Because we adapt in our own way," he said. "Strength alone isn't enough. Survival isn't about who can withstand the cold, it's about who can think, plan, and adjust." Riss tilted his head. "I fail to see how this device will help. You are still cold and your bodies are fragile. It is inefficient." "That's the point," Lara said sharply. You see, we humans don't rely on one thing to survive. We combine tools, ideas, and cooperation. That's why we can endure places you think impossible. The Taylorian left without another word, but the humans know. The cold on Vera 9 never let up. Even during the daylight hours, the icy wind cut through the settlement like a knife. Humans had learned to adapt, using clever inventions and teamwork to survive. Yet the Taylorians, graceful and strong, still looked at them with quiet curiosity and perhaps a hint of doubt. One morning, the Taylorian leaders arrived at the human settlement. Their tall, blue-skinned forms moved effortlessly through the snow, and their eyes glimmered with intelligence. Eli and Lara stood among the humans ready to greet them. "We have been observing your species," said Rhys, the same Taylorian who had visited the dormitory weeks ago. "Your ability to survive is unusual. We would like to test it further." Eli raised an eyebrow. "Test it? What do you mean?" Rhys's eyes glowed faintly. "A challenge. Humans against Taylorians, a race through the frozen canyon beyond the mountains. Endurance, strategy, and survival will be tested. You may use your inventions and ideas. We will rely on our natural abilities. Let us see whose methods are superior." Murmurs spread among the humans. Some were nervous. Vera 9 was harsh enough without a challenge. Others were excited. Humans had a habit of turning impossible situations to their advantage. Lara stepped forward, her confidence steady. "We accept," she said. "We will show that humans survive not because of strength alone, but because of ingenuity and cooperation." The Taylorians inclined their heads. "Very well. The challenge begins at dawn tomorrow. No cheating. No interference from others. Let the canyon decide the victor." That night, Eli and Lara gathered the human team in the dormitory. Engineers, explorers, and inventors crowded around, huddled over sketches and devices. The humans had one advantage, their minds. Strength could be measured, but intelligence and adaptability were harder to predict. "We need a plan," Lara said. "The canyon is dangerous, ice cracks, sudden cliffs, snowdrifts. The Taylorians are strong but predictable. We are not." Eli nodded, pointing to a rough map of the canyon. "We can create portable bridges with panels and ropes. Use the heaters to soften snow in some areas, and for cliffs, pulleys and harnesses will work. They won't expect us to think like this." The humans worked late into the night preparing their tools. Each invention, each clever solution was tested and adjusted. Small devices for climbing, heating, and signaling were packed into backpacks. Blankets, reflective shields, and improvised crampons were included. The next morning, the humans and Taylorians lined up at the canyon's edge. The wind howled and snow whipped across the frozen landscape. Rhys gave a nod and the race began. The Taylorians moved first, their long strides covering the icy ground effortlessly. Eli and the humans followed more cautiously, using their devices to create safer paths. A sudden crevasse opened ahead. The Taylorians, confident in their strength, paused briefly, calculating. The humans acted immediately, laying portable panels across the gap and securing them with ropes. Within minutes, the team was across, and the Taylorians had no choice but to follow the precarious path. Eli noticed the difference immediately. The Taylorians relied on instinct and strength. They expected the terrain to behave predictably. Humans relied on tools, observation, and quick improvisation. Each small trick gave the team a small advantage. At another point, a wall of ice blocked the path. The Taylorians tried to climb it naturally, but the surface was slick. Eli and Lara activated small heaters to soften the ice, creating grips for their team. Using ropes and pulleys, they scaled the wall efficiently. One by one, the humans reached the top, smiling and cheering. The Taylorians, still struggling, had begun to realize that human methods were unpredictable. By midday, exhaustion began to show. The humans were cold but alert. The Taylorians, though physically strong, were tiring from continuous effort. Humans thrived in these situations because they took calculated breaks, shared warmth, and used devices to conserve energy. Each human was connected to another by ropes or signals, a system of cooperation that the Taylorians did not anticipate. At one point, Eli's small group encountered a cliff with a sharp drop below. The Taylorians simply leaped and descended with natural skill. Humans paused, analyzing the safest way. Eli quickly assembled a pulley system from ropes, harnesses, and a small winch. One by one, the humans descended safely, while the Taylorians, watching, looked puzzled. The human team was not faster, but they were safer and more precise. Lara whispered to Eli, "See, it's not about speed or strength. It's about thinking ahead, adapting, and helping each other. That's what humans do best, Eli nodded. And that's why we will win this, not by brute force, but by intelligence and teamwork. The canyon narrowed and a sudden snowstorm blew in. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The Taylorians slowed, unsure of the terrain. The humans, however, had portable reflectors and simple heat markers. They created small signals to guide their team, moving carefully but confidently. The Taylorians, seeing the lights, realized too late that humans were using every advantage their environment offered. Hours passed. The humans faced challenges that would have stopped many species: ice falls, hidden crevasses, snowdrifts. But they solved each problem as a team. The Taylorians, relying only on their physical prowess, struggled. Confidence began to waver among them. Near the canyon's end, the humans worked together to build a temporary bridge over a wide gap. Eli adjusted a pulley system. Lara stabilized panels, and another engineer anchored the ropes. The Taylorians arrived shortly after, hesitant and unsure. One of them attempted to leap, misjudged the distance, and landed awkwardly. The humans had anticipated every move and now had a clear advantage. Finally, the humans reached the canyon's exit, tired but triumphant. The Taylorians followed, exhausted, and silently acknowledged the humans' skill. They had underestimated human adaptability, ingenuity, and cooperation. The humans had not relied on strength alone. They had used brains, tools, and teamwork to overcome every obstacle. Eli and Lara looked at each other, smiling under their frost-covered helmets. "We did it," Eli said softly. Lara nodded. "Humans always find a way. We survive not because we are the strongest, but because we are clever, adaptable, and willing to work together." Rhys approached, his eyes thoughtful. "I see now. Humans are not weak. Your species survives where others would fail. Strength is visible, but your ingenuity, that is far more powerful." Eli smiled. "We've always known that. Physical strength is useful, but survival is about thinking, learning, and helping each other. That's what makes humans unique." The team returned to the settlement, cold and tired, but proud. Their small acts of cleverness, using ropes, panels, portable heaters, and simple tools, had turned an impossible challenge into a victory. And the Taylorians, though strong, had learned to respect the humans' ingenuity. That night, back in the dormitory, Eli and Lara shared a blanket as they always did. Outside, the auroras painted the frozen sky with green and violet light. Inside, the humans celebrated quietly, aware that their greatest victories often came from small acts: trading blankets, improvising solutions, and thinking creatively in the face of impossible odds. "Fair trade?" Lara asked, tossing him the blanket. "Fair trade," Eli agreed, smiling. He knew that the victory in the canyon was more than just a contest. It was proof that humans thrived not because of strength, but because of heart, creativity, and collaboration. The cold of Vera 9 had not defeated them. The Taylorians had not outmatched them. Humans had survived, adapted, and triumphed once again. Not through force, but through cleverness, cooperation, and the human spirit. And this was only the beginning of their story on this frozen, alien world. The storm that swept through Vera 9 after the canyon challenge was one of the worst the settlement had seen. Winds clawed at the domes. Snow piled so high that doors were sealed shut, and the sky turned white for days. Inside, the humans and Taylorians were forced to remain together. For the first time since arriving on the planet, both species shared the same danger, and both saw how much they needed one another. Eli woke up to the sound of the wind battering the dormitory walls. Frost crept along the window edges. He pulled the blanket closer around his shoulders and looked across the room. Lara was awake already, as usual, her hands busy with a small device. "What's that one?" Eli asked, his breath turning to mist in the cold air. "It's a signal beacon," Lara said. "If the storm lasts longer, we'll need a way to guide people between the domes. It will flash bright enough to cut through the whiteout." Eli smiled. "You never stop thinking, do you?" "We can't afford to," Lara replied simply. Around them, the other humans were also at work. Some were checking heater units. Others were preparing emergency packs. The Taylorians watched with quiet interest. They had always relied on their natural endurance, but in a storm like this, even they felt the danger creeping in. By midday, a group of Taylorians came to the humans' workshop. Rhys stood at the front, his tall form casting a long shadow over the equipment. "We wish to learn your methods," he said. "Your fair trades, as you call them." Lara exchanged a glance with Eli. "Fair trades?" Rhys tilted his head. That is what you call it, is it not? When you exchange one thing for another to survive. You gave blankets to one another, you built devices, you share ideas. This is not our way, but it seems to work. Eli chuckled softly. Yes, we trade skills, tools, and ideas. That's how The sun rose weakly over the frozen horizon of Vera 9, sending pale light across the settlement. The storm had passed, but its memory still lingered in the snowdrifts and the cracked domes. Humans and Tellurians were tired but proud. They had survived together. Now they needed to plan for what came next. Eli woke early, his breath visible in the cold air. He dressed quickly and stepped outside to see the new day. Beyond the domes, the snow stretched like a silver desert. In the distance, tall peaks glowed faintly under the sun. For the first time since arriving, he felt a sense of hope instead of fear. Lara joined him, holding a steaming mug of tea. Morning, she said softly. It's quiet now, Eli nodded. Too quiet. Everyone's waiting to see what happens next. Lara took a sip. We can't just wait. We need a plan. The storm taught us how strong we are together. Now we need to build something lasting. Inside the main hall, humans and Tellurians gathered for a meeting. Rhys stood beside Lara, his tall frame bending slightly to fit under the low ceiling. We have survived the storm, he began. But winter will return. We cannot rely on luck again. We must prepare. The hall was full of murmurs. Tellurians in their heavy fur cloaks, humans in patched jackets. Tools and heaters lined the walls. Everyone knew the settlement's survival depended on their next steps. Lara projected a map on the wall. We've identified 3 possible sites for expansion. One is near the geothermal vents where heat rises naturally. Another is by the ice canyon where we can mine for minerals. The third is farther south where the sun is stronger. Eli pointed at the geothermal site. If we build there, we'll have natural heat. Less fuel needed for heaters. Rhys tilted his head. But more danger. The vents can erupt. We do not know their cycles. Mira, the young engineer, raised her hand. We can study them first. We've learned to build sensors. We'll place them and measure the heat before we build anything. The discussion lasted for hours. Finally, they agreed. They would send a joint team, half human, half Tellurian, to explore the geothermal vents and build a small outpost. If successful, the outpost would become a second base for farming, energy, and research. The next day, preparation began. Humans packed tools, heaters, and portable shelters. Tellurians gathered climbing gear, maps, and snow beasts to carry heavy loads. The atmosphere buzzed with a sense of adventure. For the first time, this was not just about surviving, it was about exploring and creating something new. Eli watched as a Tellurian scout fitted a human-built heater to his belt. Fair trade, the scout said with a toothy smile. Fair trade, Eli replied. They set out at dawn. The team moved like a single organism across the snow. Tellurians led the way, reading the terrain with their natural instincts. Humans followed with equipment, measuring wind speed, mapping the ground, and setting markers. The journey was long but steady. At one point, a crevasse blocked their path. The ice cracked underfoot, revealing a dark drop below. In the past, such an obstacle might have forced them to turn back. But now they had rope systems, anchors, and heat drills, tools invented by humans and improved by Tellurians. Lara anchored the rope. We'll cross one at a time, she instructed. A Tellurian tested the line first, then helped pull equipment across. Within an hour, everyone and everything was safely on the other side. By nightfall, they reached a ridge overlooking the geothermal vents. Steam rose from the earth, curling into the cold air. The smell of minerals hung heavy. It was dangerous but beautiful. We'll set up camp here, Rhys said. Tomorrow we explore the vents. The team worked quickly, combining their skills. Humans built windshields and heaters while Tellurians dug trenches and secured the tents. By evening, the camp glowed warmly under the alien sky. That night, they sat together around a heater. Eli watched the auroras above, streaks of green and violet dancing in the darkness. Do you think this will work? He asked Lara quietly. It has to, she replied. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about proving that humans can build something better, even on a world like this. Rhys overheard them. It is about proving that Tellurians can change too, he said. We have lived alone for centuries, but alone we are weak. Together we are stronger. The next morning, the team began studying the vents. They placed sensors to measure heat and gas. They used small drones to map the underground tunnels. The data streamed back to their tablets in real time. Mira knelt by a vent, adjusting a sensor. "The temperature's stable," she said. "We can use this heat to warm our shelters." A Taylorian geologist added, "The rock here is strong. We can build platforms over the vents." As the day went on, the humans and Taylorians worked side by side, sharing ideas, tools, and food. This was no longer an experiment. It was a partnership. During lunch, Eli sketched on a tablet. "If we build wind turbines here," he said, "we can store extra energy for the settlement. No more fuel shortages." A Taylorian engineer nodded. "And if we carve channels, the steam can be directed into turbines. We know the rock patterns. We can guide the flow." They spent hours planning. The more they talked, the more the design grew, a hybrid of human technology and Taylorian knowledge. It was not just an outpost anymore. It was becoming the first true joint city of two species. At night, after the day's work, Lara walked alone to the edge of the vents. Steam curled around her boots. She thought about Earth, about the long journey that had brought them here, about the risks they had taken. She thought about how a simple act, pulling a blanket and saying fair trade, had led to this. Eli joined her. "You're thinking again," he said with a smile. "I'm always thinking," she replied softly. "I wonder what the people back on Earth would say if they saw this." "They'd say humans found a way," Eli said. "We always do," Lara nodded. "Yes, but we didn't do it alone. That's the point." Behind them, Riss was speaking to the group. "This place is dangerous," he said. "But so is our settlement. And yet we survived. With humans, we will build here too." The following days were full of hard work. They built the first platform over a vent, using reinforced plates designed by humans and anchored by Taylorian methods. They dug channels for steam, built storage shelters, and placed warning beacons. Each success brought more trust. Each challenge overcame old doubts. Even when a minor vent eruption scattered tools and equipment, no one panicked. They simply rebuilt, stronger than before. One evening, as the camp prepared dinner, a Taylorian scout approached Lara with a bundle of rare minerals from the vent area. "For your sensors," he said. "They will read better with this." "Thank you," Lara said, surprised. "Fair trade?" The scout smiled. "No gift, you have taught us much. We begin to understand sharing." Lara felt a warmth deeper than the heaters could provide. Humans had not only survived, they had changed another culture. By the end of the week, the outpost stood like a small fortress over the steaming earth. Flags of both species fluttered in the cold wind. It was not yet finished, but it was real, and it was theirs. Eli climbed a nearby ridge to look down at the outpost. He saw humans checking turbines, Taylorians hauling supplies, children from both species playing near the tents. For a moment, he felt he was looking at the future, a place where survival was not just a fight, but a partnership. Lara joined him on the ridge. "What do you see?" she asked. "I see a city," he said simply. "A city? Yes, not today, not tomorrow, but someday. A city built on fair trade, built by two species side by side," Lara smiled. "Then we'd better get to work." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ice, the outpost glowed like a beacon. It was more than metal and steam. It was a promise that humans were more than survivors. They were builders, sharers, and dreamers. And in this frozen world, that was the greatest strength of all. Weeks passed since the first outpost was built over the geothermal vents. What started as a temporary camp had become a real settlement. Humans and Taylorians lived side by side, sharing food, tools, and dreams. The wind turbines turned slowly in the cold air. Steam rose from the channels they had carved. The once empty plains of Vera 9 now echoed with the sound of construction and laughter. Eli walked across the new platform early one morning. The sky above was dark blue and thin ice crystals floated in the air like stars. He paused to watch a group of children, 2 human, 1 Taylorian, playing with a toy drone. They guided it through the steam channels, cheering when it zipped between 2 poles. He smiled. This was not just survival anymore. It was life. Lara came up beside him, wearing a heavy coat and a bright scarf. "You're up early," she said. "I couldn't sleep," Eli replied. "I keep thinking about how far we've come." She followed his gaze to the children. "It's strange, isn't it? A few months ago, we didn't even trust each other. Now our kids are playing together. Eli nodded. It's more than strange. It's historic. Inside the main hall of the outpost, Riss was already speaking to the community. We have heat. We have power. We have food. But we are not finished. We must decide how to contact the outside. He gestured to the ceiling. Our old transmitter is weak. It cannot reach the colony ship still in orbit. Mira, the engineer, spread out her plans on the table. We've been gathering minerals from the vents. With these we can build a stronger antenna, but it will have to be placed on the highest ridge where the wind is dangerous. Lara leaned over the map. That ridge is 3 kilometers away. We'll need a full team and